They didn't call them church plants back then. They called them home missions. And I started out, at the bottom, I started at a home mission church in Oxford, Ohio. It was running 11. So Tammy came, and we had a brand new baby boy, just months old, named Jonathan. So the church grew to 14. I mean, we're on fire. But that first Sunday, everybody that's anybody wants to see what the new guy looks like. So we had like 20 people. But it was huge for me. Now, it wasn't the first time I'd ever preached. I was a youth pastor, and when the lead guy was gone, he let me go ahead and fill in. So I was the fill-in, but it wasn't my church. This Sunday in Oxford was my church. I'm the pastor. I mean, I worked on that sermon. Because it's kind of a truism. When there's a new pastor, some people come that first Sunday and decide if they're ever going to come back again. What's the new guy like? So I thought, man, you're going to find out what the new guy's like. And so I worked and worked. I tweaked it. And this is before computers where I had to redo pages and cross out. And the Saturday before, I was on adrenaline already. This is my church. I'm preaching in my church to my people. And I worked on that sermon again. And that night, I put it on the kitchen table, worked on it, and left it there. In my dreams, I was dreaming about that sermon. And Sunday morning, my folks had bought me a black suit. Now, that's back in the day. Men were men, and women were women, and pastors wear suits. So my folks, Tammy and I didn't have 2 dimes. So my parents bought me a black suit for marriages and funerals and preaching. So I had my black suit on, ready to go. I thought of some things I want to tweak, make the sermon even better, because by now it should have been canonized. I mean, it was biblical literature. I went to the kitchen table, and it was gone. The terror that went through me. And we didn't live right next door to the church. They had kind of a small parsonage for us, and it was in town, so I had to drive to church. And I told Tammy, my sermon, my masterpiece. And she said, well, let's she's calm, let's look for it. So you know me, I'm not one to overreact. Again, it hurts me when you laugh. We're scouring the house. I mean, my sermon, I've worked and worked and worked on that thing. And Tammy, in calmness, said, okay, we've looked everywhere. Is it possibly on you? Is it in one of your pockets? And I went, that's just stupid. And there it was. And so you say, okay, Gene, what was that first sermon? For the life of me, I don't remember. But I do remember losing it in the panic of that first Sunday. You're saying, Gene, I bet it was like yesterday. No, and for me, it feels like that's 1,000,000 years ago. But you kind of bookend. That first sermon had that kind of episode. And here I am at my last sermon. Now, I'm going to be speaking at different conferences. We come back in October, the end of October. I already have one. I'm going to Ohio to speak. So I got more speaking. But it's not going to be here. It's not to my church, to my people. So this has some emotions for me. You're saying, the last statement you make to us, I bet you tossed and turned. I bet you spent hours trying to figure out what's the perfect. No. I knew immediately. I knew exactly what I was going to do without any hassle. And I need to take you back. Some of you were here, some of you weren't. We were worshiping in the old sanctuary, and we were getting ready to build this dream. And we had months and months and months of campaign, information, questions and answers, church meetings, describing what we were doing. And in that building, we were cramped. It was a mess. It's the old youth center was our sanctuary. We decided our last collect the pledges. We want to do that in one big blowout. We needed to bring everybody together, and so we rented the Ark at VU. And then we began to plan that service because it's kind of a marriage. There's pep rally to it. There's excitement to it. Buy into the future. You know what these things are like. We're trying to help you become excited about our future and the continuation of our story and how outdated and how unusable that room was. So I knew I was going to speak, and so I was jazzed. I was really getting ready for this thing. And I knew at the end, before we took those pledges, I needed to send you out ready to go. And so I worked on something, and I had a thought about something I just lived through. I thought, if I could condense that into a synopsis, that's a powerful, powerful piece of my life and a powerful story about what the church is about. And so I did it. And I wrapped up that service in the Ark 11 years ago with just a short synopsis of these events in my life. As soon as that was done, I could sense you people bought it, you people got it. It was powerful. And that afternoon, I began to write because I only did a short synopsis. I thought, this is an entire sermon. I need to develop this into the whole story and not just give the cliff notes, but give the whole story. And someday, at some point, I need to give this story. Well, it took me about 2 seconds to realize my last sermon ever needs to be this story, which if you were at the Ark years ago, you may even remember snippets of it. Because sermons, even though it's 11 years old, who can forget what I say? So knowing what I wanted to do for my last sermon to my own people in my own church really wasn't some journey. Maybe it was the Lord saying, this is obvious. This is so clear. And Bill and Joy read this morning, and the key verse is Revelation 19:9. Let's get going. I want you to see this verse. And the angel said to me, write this, happy are those who have been invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And the angel said, these are the true words of God. Happy are those at the marriage supper of the Lamb. I've got to admit, I don't know eternity. You don't know eternity. Everything's finite for me. I can't grasp eternity. But there are pieces of eternity that we're told about. One of them is the marriage supper of the Lamb. It is that time of reunion. I have parents that have gone ahead, that are in heaven. I'm prepared to meet with them. I want to see Jesus. I have pastor friends that have been so close that died so prematurely. That marriage supper of that Lamb, that banquet, that opportunity, that reunion. Happy are those that are in that reunion. Now, put that in the back of your mind. I promise we're going to come back there. But I need to walk you through my family. You know Tammy, my wife. We have 2 children. Jonathan, our oldest, and Julie is our daughter. Jonathan is military. And this morning's message has an incredibly strong military theme. That's exactly why I wanted Bill and Joy to read, and not only read, but share about their own military history. They were perfect for today. Jonathan in military, his first deployment was in Germany. In Germany, he met a young girl, fell in love, and got married. He did not, this wasn't a local, he didn't marry a German girl. The girl he married was also military. She was from Iowa. I always kid him, said, so you went to Germany to meet a girl from Iowa. Down in their marriage, which is now, as I think about it, coming in their like 18th anniversary, time just goes. They have 2 boys. Their first one is David. Their second one is John. They were very, very young in 2006. David was about 2-ish. John was a baby. And they got the word that both of them were going to be deployed. I thought, you can't do this. They have children at home. You can't deploy Crystal and John at the same time. Who's going to take care of those kids? Us. Crystal's parents helped, but there was some real honest physical limitations that made it so they couldn't do a lot. Tammy and I basically for 13 months had to raise our grandbabies. Now, for those of you that were part of our church way back then, you remember us bringing our grandchildren to church and putting them in the nursery and toddler church and us raising these 2 boys. And I mean, they were babies. John was in a high chair. We're back to that food that smells terrible going, oh, this is delicious. It was the whole deal, but part of it made me a little frustrated because I think there are things that are reserved for mom and dad. Hearing those first words, Jonathan and Crystal didn't get, Tammy and I got. The first steps, Jonathan and Crystal didn't get, Tammy and I got. And that kind of frustrated me because I felt like I'm robbing them of a right of privilege when it's your kids. There's also that great joy. We potty trained our baby, or John. And I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I'm way, way too old to cheer poop successfully going in a toilet. Hey, I'm retiring. What can they do to me now? We potty trained. I mean, we raised these children. As both John and Crystal were in Iraq. Crystal's role was really, really pretty safe. She was in communications. She was in the post office. Jonathan Kidzer says, your Iraq experience was a post office and a Pizza Hut, which it was. Jonathan, not so much. If you can go back to 2006, the news was talking about the Sunni Triangle of Death. That's where Jonathan was. And he was in the 101st Airborne, and they called his unit the Widowmakers. And so it hung on us. We prayed. We prayed angels around that kid. For he was in a place where people were dying. And one night, he was, I wish I knew exactly, things get fuzzy. I think he was there about a month. And toward the evening, the phone rang, and I grabbed it. Now, for you young people, a phone is an instrument that you talk into. And then you can listen and someone will talk back to you. I answered the phone, and he said, this is the chaplain from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I could feel my heart. Why is the chaplain calling me? And then he said, Jonathan is fine. I had, you're like you thinking, this makes no sense. It made no sense. Jonathan is fine. So, you can almost sense tension over the phone. He said, oh, sir, I'm sorry. This is your first phone call, isn't it? And again, I'm so far behind the conversation. And Tammy's trying to read because she knows something's going on. And I said, this is my first phone call. You're so far ahead of me in this conversation. He said, I apologize. I'm the chaplain. And this is a policy that we have as part of my role. I see it as a courtesy. But someone in this vast company was killed today. And what we want to do, and before we release the company numbers, you might pick up on the media and only hear the numbers and worry about your son. One of the things that's my responsibility, before we release those numbers, I call every single home and say, it's not your son. Your son's alive. Your son's fine. And he said, it's kind of a courtesy. We just don't want you torpedoed. Well, it made sense. And so I thanked him and hung up. Now, Tammy's going, what's going on? And so I explained what was happening to her. Now, for me, it was kind of done. But about, just a few minutes later, in a dark living room by herself, I heard Tammy sitting and crying. Now, ladies, you believe we know what we should do. Can I tell you, I'm just like your husband. I'm no better, I'm no worse. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. She's in there crying. Part of me is saying I should run in there and hug her. Part of me is saying she needs distance. Just let her have distance. So I compromised. I thought, okay, I'll give her 5 minutes. I'll give her some time to herself. If this thing dissipates, fine. If it doesn't, I'll go in there. Well, it didn't. It got worse. It escalated. And so I went in and I said, honey, I don't know. But I'm a solver. I spent my life solving stuff. Tell me why you're crying. I'll never forget. Because I tried to help her. I said, are you crying because you were just relieved our son's safe? Are you crying because you realize he's in a really dangerous area? Are you crying because some mom somewhere in America found out her boy's gone? Why? And she looked at me and said, I don't know. But I just have to cry. I don't know. And so again, I'm searching. I said, okay, honey, do you want me to sit with you? Do you want me to hold you? Do you want me just to be with you? Do you want to be by yourself? Tell me what you want. And she looked at me and said, I think what I really want, can I just be alone? And so I left, went into a different room and tried to read. I listened to my wife crying in the living room, and I got angry because the war was in my house. The war is now in my living room, and I didn't invite it. Over the next 13 months, we had 11 phone calls. Every time the phone rang, we held our breath. 11 total, 10 more young men were killed. And we got that phone call over and over and over. And Tammy sat in the living room and cried over and over. I never shed one tear, but I got angry over all that was going on. I did learn later that 3 of those that had died were Jonathan's very, very good friends. And he, in fact, was very fortunate. His Jeep had gone over one of those those bombs, IEDs. It wasn't a direct hit. A young man who had his elbow on the edge of the Jeep was shattered. Jonathan had his fillings blown out. And he had to go to a base, still in Sunni Triangle of Death, and have dental work done. And while the dentist was working on trying to repair his teeth and the fillings, they came under mortar fire. And the dentist said, Sergeant, I can't stop now. And so he did the best he could under the situation. As it turned out, more than a decade later, and even a little bit now, they're still messing with Jonathan's jaw and his teeth over what happened on that day. Christmas 2006 was tough for us. Because Christmas in our home, I think, is like Christmas in your home. That Christmas dinner is an event. It's the dinner of the year. I will fast for days getting ready for that Christmas dinner. Because Tammy is a pro at knowing what your favorite is. And everybody's favorite miraculously appears on that table. Now, I don't go crazy at the meal. I'm very disciplined because I know the dessert is apple pie, and that's for me. Tammy can make an apple pie that is like nothing nowhere else. I mean, it absolutely stands alone. I'm getting hungry. I got to stop. I cut myself a gigantic piece, and that's the time Tammy doesn't go, little large, it's Christmas. I cut myself, I microwave it until it's too hot to eat, and then put ice cream on top. It's a piece of heaven. I've always told her there's got to be some kitchens in heaven, because I can't imagine eternity without that apple pie. So every Christmas dinner in our home, maybe like yours, that Christmas dinner is the dinner of the year. Everybody's favorite appears, and Tammy just seems to know she's in heaven making that stuff. I'm in heaven eating that stuff. We're a perfect marriage. We had just finished dinner, and the phone rings. And your first thought is, oh, Lord, no, not on Christmas. We didn't need Fort Campbell telling us someone else is dead. And Tammy happened to be by the phone. She picked it up, and it was Jonathan. All those guys got about 5 minutes on Christmas to call home, say Merry Christmas. She talked to him for a couple minutes. I talked to him for a couple minutes. He said hi to his boys. And then Jonathan, unknowing, said the worst thing he could possibly say. It was perfect until he finished it with his mom and made the grand mistake. He said to his mother, what'd you have for dinner? It killed her. Because his favorite was not on the table. It just killed her. That she couldn't give Jonathan and she wanted what he had for dinner in Iraq. I remember we were cleaning up the kitchen, and Tammy again was crying. And I couldn't figure out exactly what I'm supposed to say or do. Crystal came home before Jonathan. As a sergeant, they kind of overlap with the sergeants coming in, kind of going over the rules of engagement and all that stuff to prepare them to lead their guys. So Jonathan had to wait a little longer. Crystal came home. Crystal's parents was able to go down and greet her. But then Tammy went down because the idea was we want Tammy and Crystal to spend time with those boys because as far as those boys know, Tammy's their mom. Every little boy that skins his knee runs to his mommy. And it happened. David skinned his knee and went right by Crystal, straight to Tammy. And so they had a little bit of time, the two of them, to work to reinitiate this family the way it's supposed to be, what's healthy, with their boys having their mom, who's kind of a stranger as opposed to Tammy, who's been raising them. So we had this transition, but Crystal had called and said, we're going to find out when they leave Iraq, and we're only going to have about 10, 12, 14 hours because they're going to go somewhere in Europe. They don't divulge that stuff. Refuel, go do some stuff, and then come over. So you're going to get about a 12 to 14-hour head start. I said, okay, you tell me when you get the word, you tell me I'm down there. And I told Pastor Sean, I said, I don't know. This call might come at midnight on Saturday night or Sunday morning, or it may come Saturday afternoon. I'm gone. So I think you need to have a sermon ready to go in case I bolt on you. He said, got it. It's exactly what happened. Saturday late afternoon, I got the call. I called Sean. I said, you're on. I'm down there. He said, goodbye. Great. And so Sean got up and said, listen, this morning, the title and the bulletin, everything is wrong. But I found out later how cool it was for me. When he said that, he said, the reason it's wrong is because Jean's gone, Jonathan's coming home. And the whole church gave a standing ovation that day. Because you had kind of been part of the story as we brought those boys. I thought, how cool. We really do, honestly, do life together, don't we? I try to, this is going somewhere, I promise, but I'm trying to describe the scene. It's an interesting design. You just can't go on the base and say, well, it's all, reserved areas. I go anywhere I want. No. You get on the base in your car, they take you right to a parking lot, and you leave your car, you get on the bus, and they take you to the restricted area, and that's all fenced off. You can't go moseying around Fort Campbell. But it's all sectioned off, but it's really well done. You see the runway where the plane's going to come in and a chain link fence, and then there's some bleachers they put up in case you want to watch the plane come in. Then you kind of walk a long circle into this gigantic hangar. And the hangar is obviously set up for a program. There's bleachers set up. There's a stage. There's area for like a brass band. And there's banners everywhere. Welcome home, 101st, well done, Screaming Eagles. You kind of get caught up in it. But the problem is we had to get there right away. We don't know when the plane's coming. This is not a flight into O'Hare. It could be 4 hours from now. It could be 7 hours from now. We just had to cool our heels and wait. And Tammy and Crystal were so smart. We have two little boys. They had this gigantic bag where they'd pull something out for them to do. About the time they got bored with that, something magically appeared, something else that would be fun to do. All that afternoon, they just kept, when the boys got bored, magically something else came. And there was another family with other little boys, and they formed a circle, and Tammy and Crystal entertained them. They really planned it well. It was brilliant. They planned for those boys. Their mistake, they didn't plan for me. Nobody gets bored faster than me. Cooling my heels, I walked around the hangar for a while, and then I would walk outside where the bleachers were, play with the boys for a while, and then I'd go walk around. It's all roped off. You can't go strolling around the base. Hours and hours and hours. They'd planned nothing for me. A couple hours in, this great big black car pulls up with a star in front, and I'm going, oh, this is cool. This is a general. And he gets out, and he comes, and he's going to people. He comes to me and shakes my hand and wants to know why I'm there. And I said, well, my son, the Staff Sergeant Tanner, and he'll be coming home. And he thanked me for my son's service. And he went around, and I thought, well, this is something to do. This is kind of cool. I'm going to follow the general. I'm going to listen to people talking because I'm discreet. Nobody will even notice me. So I stayed a few paces behind the general, just kind of listening in. Not necessarily because I was incredibly interested. I was just bored. And it came to this girl, and she's the beginning when it all came apart for me. This girl had a baby in her arms, and she gave the name of her husband, and she said, I was pregnant when he left. Pretty soon, he's going to see his daughter for the very first time. And the power of the moment began to hit me. Everybody's got a story. All these people got those 11 phone calls. And this guy's going to see his baby girl now. And as this was kind of dawning on me, and all of a sudden, the immensity of the day, I kind of turned, and on the edge of the bleachers, there was this little girl that was just a little bit too cute. Red hair, ponytails, freckles, the teeth missing that are supposed to miss when they're too cute. She was just darling. And she had in her arms this poster that she'd painted. Obviously, she'd painted it. It was slopped on. But it said, my daddy's my hero. He's a sergeant in the Screaming Eagles. And when I saw this little girl saying her daddy was a hero, and this young woman with a brand new baby, I broke. I started crying. All of a sudden, I don't know why, but it just came and came and came. I could hardly walk. I made my way to the edge of the bleachers and sat down and just began to weep. And I thought, Tammy's got to see this. She's got to see this brand new baby. She's got to see this little girl. I called her Pippi Longstockings. She's got to see Pippi Longstockings. Tammy's got to see all this. This is amazing. So I'm making my out in that long circle toward the bleachers. I mean, I am just teary. Tears are dropping down my face. Tammy's with Crystal, with the boys, and she sees me and realizes something's wrong. So she says, Crystal, I got to see Dad. So she runs to me. I said, Tammy, come quick. You got to see this. I'm dragging her in the hangar. I said, it's a brand new baby. You've never seen this little girl. Go see this little girl for the very first time. Look at Pippi Longstockings. I can hardly speak. I'm coming apart. And again, Tammy is just, it's hard to ruffle her. She's got such a unique wisdom. She sat me down and she said, here's what I think. That baby, that's a story. And this little girl, Pippi, she's cute. But that's not the issue. You know you never cried for 13 months? You know you held everything in for 13 months? I think that now that Jonathan is safe, you've given yourself permission to let it go. And in her wisdom, Tammy said, let it go. And I did. Oh, man. I just sat there and cried everything out. I cried out a cruddy Christmas. I cried out raising our grandchildren, hearing the first steps, watching hearing the first words. I cried out every single phone call when my wife was crying in the living room. I cried every piece of anger out. I just let it go. I needed it. And Tammy kind of held me as I finally had permission to let it go. A few minutes later, they announced the airplane carrying the soldiers has just cleared Fort Campbell airspace. If you want to watch the plane land, go outside. Did we want to watch the plane land? Are you kidding me? Everybody was sprinting out of that hangar. They gave us little flags to wave, and they make it an event. It is honestly so cool. When that plane comes out of the clouds, on both sides are F-14 fighters. They escort that thing in, and then those 14 fighters break off, and they come right over us and hit those afterburners. I mean, it's bang, and we are cheering. That plane lands. You think those guys could hear you cheering? Of course not. We had to. We had to participate in this. We'd waited for this moment. The plane kind of circles around, and they're bringing up steps, and the general's going to come and meet them. It took them forever. I'm going, open the door. It took them forever to get that thing lined up. They finally do, and the guys come out, and we're standing and cheering. Could you tell which one was Jonathan? Of course not. We just cheered them all. Then they announced that there would be a short program, and Crystal kind of told us the agenda of the day, but they announced there would be a short program to please make your way in the hangar, and the soldiers will be coming in the hangar. So we went in the hangar and sat in the bleachers, and again, it took forever. Not that patience is ever my issue. But you know, I've been part of enough programs, I know when it's close. The general came in, and he came by the stage area, and he's pointing to the guys in the brass band. pointing to the chaplain. He's kind of pointing around to everybody involved, and he realizes, okay, we're ready to go. And so he came to the microphone and said, ladies and gentlemen, and guests and family, thank you so much for this event of bringing our guys home. Would you please stand in honor? And I love the way he said it. He said, the 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles are home. And they raised that great big hangar door. The music hit, and in they marched. And I got to tell you, it was incredible. It was ever-loving incredible. The volume in that hangar. I saw Jonathan right in the middle of the group. We were cheering like nothing you've ever seen. The general spoke for a few minutes, eloquent, talking about what they had accomplished on their tour. Then the chaplain came up and prayed, eloquent, and he asked for a moment of silence, and then he named 11 names. And I looked at those guys and I thought, for us it's just names. For you guys, it's your friends. And I've been in moments of silence like that, but I've never been in that. It was powerful. Crystal had told us the agenda. She said after the program, they're going to say anybody that wants to go down and be with the soldiers, you can. They're going to kind of give some freedom because they're going to take the guys away. They have to in process, and that takes a little while. And we'll meet Jonathan out by our cars and take him home. And so Tammy and I talked about it. We said, okay, Crystal, here's our idea. When they say, everybody can go down to your soldiers and greet them personally, Mom and I, we're going to stay in the bleachers. We're not going to join you. We think that's a family time. That should just be Jonathan and you, because even though they were both in Iraq, she wasn't with him. They didn't see each other. That should just be Jonathan, his boys, and you, just your family. We're going to stay in the bleachers. There'll be a time when we can come down, but we don't think it's a good idea for us to jump in right away. Let your family be your family. So that was the game plan. So after the program, the general did say, we want you all to have a few moments with your soldiers. Eagles dismissed. Some guys went in the bleachers, but most everybody, it was like ants, came flying down to those that they just couldn't wait to hug. It was a thrill. I watched Jonathan and Crystal reunite, and I watched Jonathan pick up his boys. But I had an agenda. I knew what I was doing. In that bleacher, this was all unfolding in front of me. I saw him. I found him. He's a big guy, not overweight, but big, meaty, big neck, big hands. I watched him take a look at his baby for the first time. I saw him cry. I saw him see the face of his daughter for the first time in his life. I found Pippi. She was literally crawling up and down her daddy. I wanted to yell, hey, Pippi, your hero's home. Mine too. And as I'm watching this unrestrained joy married with relief, there was laughter, there was tears, there was the volume. The Holy Spirit has a way of just popping something in your head. You say, hey, Gene, it's the marriage supper of the Lamb. When you read about a reunion in heaven, it's better than this, but you're getting a piece of what it's like. Unrestrained joy, unrestrained relief, unrestrained tears of joy. The Holy Spirit kind of said, in this hangar, you're watching the marriage supper of the Lamb that happened right before you. As these families are being reunited, the relief that their son or husband or daddy is home was incredibly powerful. After about, not long, 5 or 10 minutes, Jonathan was kissing his wife and hugging on his boys. He looked up at Tammy and kind of smiled. I never knew Tammy could move that fast. She was down those bleachers. I was on her heels. I just grabbed that kid, told him how I loved him. They out-processed, and we had a little bit of time with them, and then they were off to Iowa. The break was not very long, it was a short break. Jonathan had a few days with Crystal's family in Iowa. Then they were coming to us. Now, I need to pull away, and I promise I'll come right back. An event in Jonathan's life has molded our relationship as father and son. He was, I think, 6th grade, maybe 7th grade. It's that weird age. They're not an adult, they're not a child, the hormones, everything's happening. He was going through something really weird, couldn't sort it out. For the life of me, I can't remember exactly what it was, although I probably wouldn't be comfortable telling you, but something was going on in his life. And I just had this flash thought. I said, Jonathan, let's go to breakfast, me and you, a couple of guys, just talk about it. And so he and I went to breakfast, and I'm a solver. And I thought, I want him to solve it. But one thing that I've learned in life, when people have a problem, it tends to give birth to another problem, which gives birth to another problem. People come for counseling with 5 problems. They don't have 5 problems. You have 1 problem. If we solve this one, all those symptoms will go away. So part of my counseling time is helping people realize you don't have 5 problems. Let's talk about the only one that's important here. And we deal with that. I think everything else will take care of itself. I've done that with Jonathan. That very first time, he shared what I was going through, and I said, Jonathan, what's really important? What's the most important thing? Well, that began a tradition all through junior high and high school, all the way to going into the military. Whenever Jonathan have tried to think something through or work something through, maybe not a gigantic problem, but just work something through, he'd say, Dad, let's go to breakfast. And now he's stationed in Fairbanks, Alaska, and we go up. There's no major problem. We just say, let's go to breakfast. The two guys, I just want to hear them and be with them. It's molded into a tradition. But when he had a problem, it was always, what's the most important thing? He was in Iowa at his leave. And the idea was they were going to come to our house, and they were arriving late in the evening, and Crystal did what every mom does. She put the boys in their pajamas, car seats, so they pull up asleep. Crystal and Tammy can get the boys and put them right to bed, the bedroom that they'd been in most of their life. And Jonathan and I would get the luggage. And we were there about an hour out, and Tammy said to me, well, you're going to ask Jonathan to go to breakfast? And I overreacted. I said, Tammy, no, don't say anything. Don't suggest it. He's only got a couple of days. I want him to be with his friends. I don't want to be in his way. I don't want to demand anything of him. He's earned his own time. I don't want to say, let's go to breakfast. I don't want to take any time. Just don't say nothing. Well, Tammy's, don't dare. And I didn't want to step into his time. They pulled up, and according to plan, Crystal and Tammy are getting the babies out of the car seats and taking them. They're asleep. Jonathan and I go to the back bin of his pickup truck. We lower it. We're grabbing the duffel bags, and right then, he hasn't been here for 5 minutes. He said, "Oh, Dad, you want to go to breakfast?" Yeah. I went, "You want to go to breakfast?" Sure. I guess we can. He said, "You want to go tomorrow?" Yeah. And I went, sure. I was so low key. I was so cool. So we went to Bob Evans on US 30, and he had to tell it. I'm sure he told Crystal, but he had to tell me. I heard the whole story. I heard about the PTSD dreams he was having that thank God he's not having anymore. I heard about the Iraq experience. I heard about his friends. I heard about the ones that had died. I heard about him carrying bodies. I heard about the death. He told me something. He said, Dad, I'm going to tell you, but you never tell Mom. She can't handle this. I never have. I won't tell you. There are things he told me I'll take to my grave. Because he said, you shouldn't tell this. He laid out everything that he'd been through. And when I felt like he was done, and breakfast had almost gone to lunch. We were there a long time. When he was done, I said, well, Jonathan, here's my thought. In all of this incredible experience of your life, and by the way, I was counting my blessings because I thought I skipped a generation. My father was in World War II on the aircraft carrier Boxer, and my son is in student of Triangle of Death. I didn't have any war experience. I felt like, praise God for me, how fortunate. But I said, Jonathan, what's the most important thing? He laughed so loud, people in other booths were going. He said, I knew you were going to say that. You always say that. I knew you were going to say that. He said, I'm ready. I prepared my answer. I said, okay. He said, most important, it's easy. It's two things. First of all, I'm home. That's the most important thing. End of the day, after all that, I'm home. I got a wife and 2 boys. And I said, I'm with you. And the second thing, he said, Dad, you have to understand, a sergeant in a war situation, staff sergeant, is everything. I had 14 guys. I told them what to do, when to do it, how to do it. I did the spacing in the caravans. I did everything for these men. I had to keep these men on task all the time. I had to live their life. And all of a sudden, my son's face, he changed. He became Sergeant Tanner. He leaned in with a resolve. He said, I had 14 men. I got all 14 men home. And that Holy Spirit voice said, he just told you the meaning of life. It's not just get to the hangar. It's get your family to the hangar. It's get those that you are responsible for to the hangar. You got to get them home. You got to get them to the marriage supper of the Lamb. It's not just me get to the marriage supper of the Lamb. It's getting you, this church, the marriage supper of the Lamb. You've heard me share this month kind of a theme. One of the biggest problems of churches today is we're filled with the converted. We're filled with the converted who have never made a real commitment of discipleship, who have never grown. They keep Jesus at such a distance, he has no real influence in their day-to-day life. Because I'm convinced with the bottom of my soul that the Bible is true. Heaven is real. Hell is real. And Satan gets us overcommitted to where we don't live in the eternity. We live in the moment, without ever having our eyes on the hanger, without almost forgetting about what is eternal, what is real. It's the hanger. It's the marriage supper of the Lamb. That is what's real. Everything else is temporary. And I'd not just get you to the hanger, get your family to the hanger. The reason we do celebrate recovery, men's ministries, women's ministries, children's ministries, is not to fill our calendars. It's to be involved in getting you to the hanger. That's all we care about. The last thing you should hear me say as your pastor: live for the eternal to the hanger.